Baruch Habayim to a walk through the Parsha, Parsha's Vayishlach. And the intention of this year, we're going to go through Rashi's perspective on the Parsha. This is specifically people that learn Chitas and already learned Rashi, but taking it in and noticing how Rashi learns Pshat and it changes the story itself and the way he understands the words impacts his larger vision of the entire storyline. That's one of our goals. So we'll go through, you have the Chumash before you, and I'll be quoting different psukim, different Rashis that many of us are familiar with. If you want, you could write down. There are lines on the side of the Chumash to mark inyanim that were neskadish to you throughout the Shir, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. So, the inyanim that we're going to go through the Parsha, note, we'll go one at a time. The first major event in our Parsha is Yaakov preparing to meet and to greet Esav. To remind you, Yaakov Avinu is he, after having, so to speak, with trickery, stolen the brachas from Esav, Yaakov Avinu escaped, for his life, based on the suggestion of his mother, Rivka Imenu. She really saw through Esav and told him to go to Lavan, her brother, Lavan Arami. The Kachava. He went to Lavan's house and over there got married, Rachel and Leah. In the previous parsha, we had the whole story between them. And now he decided, Masai Asa Labesi, he told Lavan he wants to start having parnasa for himself. And Lavan agrees to give him a maskeiris, hichluf maskarti, the whole process. And now he finally decided enough. He decided to leave. He already met met Lavan by Yigar Sadusa.
Lavan gives him brachas.
Lavan at the end gives him brachas after Malchalakim threatened him Balayla. And now he's going from minapach elapechas. He's going from bezeh, from
frying pan to
going even worse. Actually, as we'll see later on in our parsha, that the Malach says, Kiresa the Kim Va'anoshim Batuchal, who are the Va'anoshim. It's not just there's the Lekim, it's the Malach, but there's the Anoshim. You'll see Esav and Lavan. Lavan himself was no Pashta person, and here now Yaakov is heading towards meeting Esav. So Yaakov prepares on three levels, as we know, as we'll see inside. The next major event in our parsha is Yaakov's battle with the Sar. With the Sar of Esav. This is Agav one opinion in Medrash Rabbah, as Rashi is going to bring. One opinion that Rashi openly says, but there's another opinion that Rashi seems to hold of as well, that holds that it was a Malach, and Dafka Malach Gabriel.
Rather than the Sar of Esav.
Correct. And how that fits with the Pshut Shemikah, that's one of the things we'll discuss. And the third event in the Parsha is Yaakov actually meeting Esav and how that meeting goes. The fourth is the story of Parshas Dinah with Shem. Then we have Yaakov coming back and being Mekayim his neder, and the P'tir of Rivka, his mother, and then the P'tiras Rachel Imenu and the 12th Shevet being born. Okay, so maybe Levi, straighten the. Okay, good. So let's have a look inside. Yaakov is preparing to fight, to greet Esav, and it says, Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanov el Esav. He sent ahead of him malachim messengers to his brother Esav. Rashi points out that these malachim, unlike the Onkelos, the Targum, which is a Tana, and therefore, which Rashi is extremely mischashiv with. Rashi teaches malachim mamish. That means they were angels as opposed to the Onkelos that says is Gadin, which is messengers. And the reason for that is because Yaakov suspected that he's extremely dangerous, Esav, and he's out for war. By Tzavasam Lamar, he commanded them, this is what you should tell my master Esav. And now let's stop for a second and think, and then we'll look into Rashi. What is Yaakov's message to Esav? Esav hates him. He took the brachas that were meant to go to the firstborn, and these were his final brachas. It means a father prepares brachas to bench his children before he passes on, and he took them. So how is Yaakov appeasing? So these are his words. Let's note inside. Koi Amar Avdecha Yaakov. This is what your servant Yaakov says. In Lavan Garti, I lived by Lavan. Va'echar ad ata, and I took my time. I was delayed till now. Throughout this time, what happened? Vayhili shor b'chamor. I had oxen. I had donkeys. Tzoyin va'eved v'shivcha. I had sheep, servants, maidservants. And I'm sending them to tell you, first of all. Rashi points out that Veshchol lagid la'adoni is that I'm coming, and limtzachein beinecha, that one of my intentions is to get close to you. Rashi clearly separates them. But what is his message? What is he trying to convey to Esav? So you have two Rashis that point out something very interesting. He says, first of all, in Lavan Garti, which means loy nasisi sar v'chashav elager. Throughout all this time, which is quite a few years, right? We're talking about more than that. It was 14 years by Shem Va'aver on the way. And by there he was another 14 years.
No, where?
7 and 7. 7 for Rachel, 7 for Leah.
And 6 for the sheep.
Good. Say it. But that's in addition to the 14 on the way.
But he doesn't even loving God. It has nothing to do with
so where was I throughout all this time? So you shouldn't think that the brachas had that type of impact, that I'm already prospering. The brachas are not having that type of effect. Okay? As Rashi points out. And furthermore, Rashi makes sure we don't misinterpret his holiness and showing off his riches. He says, Rashi points out that even if you think that the wealth that I did accumulate is substantial, and not only substantial, is whatever, you should know that it's not a fulfillment of the bracha. So you don't have to be afraid. Now we'll see onward that he points out there are more subtle details that Rashi points out in his expression that indicate that the brachas are not taking that type of effect. Let's move on. And he continued, the messengers came back and they said, Banu alachicha el Esav. Okay, it's the Lashon. Banu alachicha el Esav. Banu alachicha should suffice, or Banu al Esav. So Rashi says, he says this and he repeats it a few times. He says, you should know, you call him Achi. Avol noyeg imcha ke'esav harasha. Oidenu b'sinasa, he still hates you tremendously. And if you look onward, Rashi says this. He says it later on. He says Pasuk Yud Beis, when he davens to the Eibishter, right? We said he made 3 hachanas. He prepared for battle. He davened to the Eibishter and gave gifts. So in the section where he's in the middle of davening to the Eibishter, the famous tefillah, he says Hatzileni na miyad Achi miyad Esav. Again, he keeps on pointing out there's Achi and there's Esav, and they're not the same. And Rashi, and we know that Rashi's words are gitzelt. And Rashi points out again, Miyad Achi she'eino yigimi ke'ach elo ke'esav harasha. He's not acting like my brother. This is according to this girsa. There's another girsa in Rashi which says, I'm acting in this way. You should know that Esav is not acting back to me. What does he want with this whole back and forth? Okay, so keep that in mind. We'll get back to the fact Rashi keeps on stressing it. Okay, the pasuk continues on in pasuk Ches. Right, but first of all, Zed go for Deirish Beer. Why Taka does the pasuk need to stress the fact that he's not noyig ke'esav? Like Achi, l'chora the pasuk continues saying, "Barbama is ish imay." Gam halach l'krascha barbama is ish imay, and these people were not coming to help the matzah. So, what exactly is Rashi adding, and why is Rashi stressing? Why is the pasuk stressing it? Frankly, okay, we'll get to that. To shoot this Rashi and understanding what he keeps on stressing about Achi. Now, pasuk Ches is the beginning of the first strategy Yaakov Avinu takes. The first strategy Yaakov Avinu takes is milchama. So it says, Vayira Yaakov ma'oid, he was afraid. Vayetzel, he was oppressed. Vayachatza esa am asher ita, he split the nation that was with him. And esatzayim esabakar b'gmalim, the sheep, the cattle, and the camels, l'shtei machnas, to two camps. What's his intention? Vayomer, and he said, Im yavay Esav el machna achas v'ko, if he comes to one camp and he smites them, vaya machna nisha lepleta, the other one will escape. They'll survive. They'll be the survivors. So really, the way it may seem to us, this doesn't look like a battle strategy. It looks like a survival method, right? Rashi doesn't learn that. The Pashta, and we need to understand where Rashi understands that from. But Rashi understands, if Vaya Hamachna Nisha Lepleta is Al Karchay, being that the first camp is going to be fighting with him, the other one is going to survive. So the Ramban, interestingly enough, learns Pshat very different, or learns Pshat that we have Yaakov had the Kabbalah that not from the Nusach HaBrachas, that it will not happen that all Bnei Yaakov will fall to the hands of Esav. And therefore, some of them are going to survive. But Rashi, that's the way the Ramban learns Pshat and Rashi. That way, some of them are definitely going to survive. Another Pshat Mefarshim bring is that Yaakov knew that he's for sure going to survive because he had the bracha. The truth is, the bracha, that when he said B'Shati B'Shalom Beis Avi, what the Eibishter promised him was really that you're going to survive. So he says, I'm definitely going to survive. So if I'll be with this half, this half is for sure going to. But from Rashi, it sounds like this is a war plan. So that's that. Rashi brings. If you look, he says Al Karchik, for sure the other one's going to be able to escape because I'm going to be fighting with him. And Rashi from here learns and introduces us to the three strategies. L'doiron, l'tfilo, l'molchama. L'doiron, he brings the gifts that we're going to see onward from Pasuk Yudalad and onward, and l'tfila is from Pasuk Yud, and he learns from these words. Good. Yeah, I want to point out that let's see the tefillah. And from the tefillah, we're going to start understanding a little bit more of Rashi's shitta. Now Yaakov Avinu moves on to the next strategy, which is tefillah. Yaakov turns to the Eibishter and says, "Elokei Avi Avram, the God of my father Avram, Elokei Avi Yitzchak, Hashem ha'omer elai." The Eibishter tells me, "Shuv la'atchel u'meladetecha ve'tiva imach." Now, if the Eibishter promised him, what's he worried? So he says, because kotointi mikol chasadim, I've been humbled, I've been small from all the chasadim the Eibishter did. Mikol ha'am is all the truth asher asisa es avdecha, which you have already done for me, your servant. Ki b'makli avarti es hayarden, as I will learn according to the first pshat, I crossed with merely a stick. And at this point, I'm already in 2 machnas. I've grown, prospered so much. And obviously, these machnas are not only, it's interesting, people overlook this, but the machna was not just saving people. He also split all the cattle and split all the. So I have 2 machnas. Now, he continues on and he says, Hatzileni no, Eibishter, please save me, miad achi, miad Esav, from my brother, from the hand of Esav, which Rashi again stresses, he's not acting like a brother. Ki yari anochi Yosef, for I'm afraid of him, pen yavoy v'ikani eim albanim, lest he come and hit me and kill me, mother in front of their children. The Ata Marta, and you have told me, Heitev Eitiv imach, good, I will be doing good with you. V'samti zerach kechol hayam, and I'll have your children, I'll ensure you have children like the sand of the sea, which will not be able to be counted from such multitude. Okay? So Rashi, I want to turn your attention to Rashi Heitiv Eitiv. And Rashi seems to say something a little detailed. He says, Heitiv, what is this double lashon? So it sounds poetic. Heitiv Eitiv, good, I will do good with you. But Rashi takes it to Rashi quotes the Medrash Rabbah that says, Heitiv is b'schuscha. That I'm going to do good in the merit of Yaakov Avinu's pu'ulos. And Eitiv is b'schus aveisecha, in the schus of your forefathers. Okay. So I want to point out that this Rashi may be the reason why Yaakov Avinu keeps on saying he's not a brother of mine. He's not acting like a brother, because Yaakov Avinu l'chura is dying. He has a Kabbalah. He got a bracha that he's going to survive. He can only be with one camp. Okay, that was his war strategy. Otherwise, everyone would be together. But he can only be with one camp. One camp is going to be saved because of him. But if the other camp is b'schus, his forefathers, that same schus Esav should also be having. Esav is also Neinikal. Esav also has the schus of Avram and the schus of Yitzchak. Befrat the Yitzchak favored him. And therefore, Yesh Loimar, that's Rashi's that he keeps on pointing out. He sees Yaakov keeps on mentioning in the Psukim that you should know I'm ready to relate to him as a brother. And if that storyline will continue, we won't even be fighting altogether. We'll survive. But he's not acting like a brother. And the second, he's not Mizera Avram. He doesn't have the midah of Rachmanas. Then the Eitiv, which is B'schus Aveisecha, should apply to my children and not to him. And therefore, the second group should be saved. And that's actually also, if you look, Rashi in Pasuk Ches, he says Vayira Vayetzer. So Rashi points out there are two stages here. There's one, he feared for himself, and one, if he's going to kill the others. It means Rashi seems to hold that there's two pchadim, two cheshbainas, and therefore he split them to two machnas, and it's helping the fact that he keeps on mentioning he's not my brother. Okay. I'm going to move on to another detail that's important. When Yaakov Avinu, we're going to move on to Pasuk Yudalid, and we're going to see that Yaakov Avinu prepares for the next stage of battle, which is the matanas, the gifts, which is starts being a little Kabbalic. Rashi has a Pshuta Shemikra explanation, which that itself is hard to understand. The Scharan, the Tzevich, the Nekevis, and that was his whole cheshbon. But B'cholofin, focusing on what he did do, V'yolan Sham Pasuk Yudalid, V'yolan Sham Balayla Hu, he slept there that night. V'yigach min haba b'yadoi, he took from what could go in his hands, and Rashi learns quite literally, Sha'adam Tsar V'noisam b'yadoi, what does a person generally carry in his hands? Abanim Toivas and Margalias, which Rashi quotes from a Medrash Agada. At first, Rashi brings the Pashta Pshat is B'Rishusa from what belongs to him, but he brings the Medrash Agada. And then following that, he goes and he goes through Izim Masayim Utiyashim Esrim, male and female goats, and Rechelim sheep, females and males, Ve'elim and rams 20, and Kumalim and Ikars of Neim, Shloishim Poris Arbaim, etc., etc. And now he goes on telling them exactly what they should say. Okay, yeah. So he says, Pasuk Yud Ches. He says, he set them up as flocks. They must be as a ayin. They should look, And he says, he said to his children, to his servants, go before me. Put space between every flock. Commanded him, saying, when my brother Esav meets you, and he's going to ask the following three questions. Who do you belong? Where are you going? And for who are these? Say, first of all, we belong to Yaakov. What are these things? This is a gift that's being sent to Esav. This is his third strategy, the donor. To Esav. V'hine gam hu acharenu, and he is also behind us. Now, before we discuss, I want to notice one nosach that he uses over here is la'adoini, to my master. And there's a machlekes between Rishonim, the Ramban, the Chazkuni, if his usage of the lashon adoini was a positive one or a negative one. The Rashi doesn't actually say over here, and it seems from Rashi that this is in line with he's presenting himself subdued to Esav, and the Ramban says this is Lamal Yosa. His tactic, the Ramban learns, was that he wanted to tell Esav, in line with what Rashi said before, that the brachas are not really meant to be taking effect. He said to Esav that I look up to you. Who do you call Adoini? Passed for a younger brother to an older brother. And b'meila, I don't look at myself as the older brother that took the b'chira, etc., etc. Other Rishonim, the Chizkuni and the Askenim, they hold that this was so much l'greisa, so much. It's true that that's what his intention was, but it was so out of place that they say that connected the 8 times that Yaakov used the lashon Adoini, you'll find at the end that Esau had 8 kings come out of him before L'fnei Melech Melech Yisrael. 8 that so to speak he got a jump start on his melucha b'schus the fact that Yaakov Avinu said Adoini, which is l'chora out of place. B'chol ofen, Yaakov Avinu commanded, let's go weiter. Yaakov Avinu commanded gam sasheni gam sashlishi gam as kol holchem achrei adorim leimer kadavar hazeh. He told them the same. This is exactly what you should be telling Esav. B'moitzachem oisai, when you find him. V'amartem, and you should say, gam hine Yaakov avdecha Yaakov acharenu. Yaakov himself is also behind us. Ki amar achapra ponav b'mincha. I'm going to, and Rashi says, I'm going, the way Rashi learns Pshat, which is, I'll soon point out the novelty of his Pshat, but Rashi says, I'm going to annul his kas, chapra panav, I'll take away his wrath, his anger, with the gift that I'm sending before him, and after that, when, so to speak, I remove his kas, then I'll see his face. Ulai yisa panai, maybe then he'll be up to greeting me. Right. So it's just interesting to point out. Rashi says a chapra panav. What's pshat? A chapra panav. Avatal rugzoi. I'm going to wipe away his anger. And according to this first pshat, Rashi doesn't agree with this pshat. Because Rashi says that this pshat means this achapra is lashon. I'll switch his face, okay, like koifer, right? Ransom or kufr kapara by avidivri, you switching, and Rashi doesn't agree with that, and therefore Rashi says v'nira de'enai. I learned pshat shekol kapara etzel oven v'chet ve'etzel panim. Anytime you find the lashon kapara by chet va'avain or by panim, like over here, lashon kinuach va'avorahin. It means moving away, destroying, or like cleansing or taking it away. He brings from Kippur Izav that the kohen is mekaneach. He wipes off his hand, and therefore it's not just switching. He learns dafka it's lashon removing. Now, if you look closely, the word that comes up in these psukim, in pasuk of Aleph Chav Beis, tremendous amount of time is the word panav. And let's see pasuk Chav Beis. The pasuk says Vatavra mincha al panav. The mincha, these gifts went before him. That's the pashto pshat. V'ulon balayla hu b'machana, and he slept over that night in the encampment. That means they continued on before him, so they had Rebach Tosimu. They were like a day ahead of him, let's say. Rashi points out Lefonov, Pashta Pshat is it went before him.
Yeah.
But Rashi is not comfortable with that, at least not sufficiently comfortable, and therefore he brings a Medrash Agada. The Medrash says that Afhu Shari Bekas, also Yaakov Avinu needed a change of face. Shayatzarech calls that he was angered that he needs to do all this. Okay? So what I would point out, besides being a tremendous hayra, I want to point out that Rashi learns, like we said before, that this is all continuation of changing face. And once Rashi learned before that a chapra panav means that I'm going to be mechaper, I'm going to change his face, and then the pasuk continues on and says it also went through Yaakov Avinu's face. So even though the pashta pshat al panav can mean before him, but the way it's brought, it doesn't say lefanav, it says al panav. So Rashi learns also Yaakov Avinu needed a change of face. Now, if you take that 2 steps farther, think for a second how it's going to be touched in the words here. That means that by sending a matana, by Yaakov Avinu sending a gift to Esav, that changed his face. So tremendously, he was bekas. Why I need to give Bechlal something to Esav? In other words, Bechlal, these brachas belong to me. I don't owe him anything. And Afal Pikin, I have to give him for my hard-earned. He had to fight with Lavan to get all this, and actually we'll see later on, he stresses this in front of Esav. If you remember from Rashi, Rashi says, you should know that I worked for this. This didn't come easy for me. It's just coming easy for you. I'm giving it to you as a gift. Shiloh over there, why Yaakovina had to say that? But Yaakovina was angry. How do you change face? By giving a matana. By you doing an act, this person's angry with someone else, by him making the move and giving something that takes away his panim, the kas he has. Anyways, so Yaakov sent this matana, and then comes a very interesting. He did his 3 strategies, and now we're moving on to the next part of the Parsha, which is an extremely interesting one, and it's shrouded in mystery. There's a man that comes, he's fighting, then all of a sudden he needs his brachas, and then the person says, I'm sorry, it's time I need to go, Allah Shachar, and he says, no, I need your bracha. So this story actually starts a drop earlier. It says he got up in the middle of the night, Yaakov Vayakam Chav Gimel, Pasuk Chav Gimel, Vayakom balaylahu, he got up that night. Vayikach Hashtei Nashim, took his 2 wives, Hashtei Shivkoisav, and his 2 maids. Vesachadasar Yeladov, his 11 children, right? Binyamin wasn't born yet. Vayavar Esmavar Yavik. He alone crossed. And then Pasuk Abdal, Vayikochim, and then he took them, Vayavirim es Nachal, and he passed them through the Nachal. Now that sounds like an interesting deal. Rashi quotes the Medrash. Look at this. Rashi Dibra Maschil. Where is it? Oh, Pasuk of Daled, Rashi. So Rashi, Yaakov Avinu personally carried all the behemoths, and he carried them. Rashi says, also Atzma Kigesher, Noitel Mekana Maniach Kan. So some that learn the Pshat, not Kigesher, rather Kigasher. Whatever the pshat is, whether he laid down and became like a bridge, or he actually stood in the middle and passed them all over, this is where the wonders begin. What was going on? What was the story there? So it's interesting to point out. I'm just going to point this out. The Zohar HaKadosh, the Zohar learns that when Yaakov Avinu sent the shluchim, the messengers, that was a Simei Tshuva. And that's a Chapra Panav. It's the time that a person sends a Chapra by the Eibishter. And the time he had the battle, that was on Yom Kippur. Yeah. And that's why it says afterwards that he came to Sukkoisa. The Zohar says it was Sukkos. This is the whole Tishrei. So it is kedai to point out that Vayavik Ish Imoi, and when he fought with the Malach according to some piyutim of the Haggadah, it was on Pesach by night. But according to the Zohar, it was Yom Kippur. And there's a Tiferes Yonason that says that to live then, that's why he had to make this whole process. Because you're not allowed to be shot with Sfina. Hashenkin, you're allowed to, if needed, you're allowed to walk into the stream in a shallow place. So that's why Yaakov had to take them through. Just according to the Zohar, it's more understood. According to this pshat, that it was Yom Kippur. And then Yaakov Avinu realizes he forgot pachim ktanim. He forgot some small jugs. So Vayvasa Yaakov levadai. He went back. Okay, the Gemara learns levadai lekadai. He went back for jugs, and he went back alone. Vayavik ish imoy adolai zashachar. A man fought with Yaakov adolai zashachar till the morning. Now, Vayavik ish imoy. Rashi brings two pirushim. Mm-hmm. One is Vayavik miloshin, like from Menachem ben Saruk, that says avok is miloshin offer. When two people fight, so it brings up Rashi says what is lashon v'li nira? Yeah, v'li nira. Shu lashon vayiskasher. V'yavik is in Aramaic. V'avak means tying. Lashon aniva. Now, why does Rashi like this more than that? They both mean the same thing. The shaila is in the source. Why was this wrestling given the name Vayavik? So why does Rashi choose one over the other? Linira, this is dafke better. So I think the pshat is, I think what Rashi's gaining by the fact that he's saying that it was a specific type of wrestling. Okay? Just like when people wrestle, they're getting together for wrestling. It's a cheap shot to give a smack or to give a punch or to do other things. It's like and therefore, what Rashi is gaining by saying that this by Avik is lashon tying, that this was a planned type of wrestle, and specifically in this mahalach, this will explain why in pasuk Chavav, next pasuk, Vayarki lo yachaloi, when he saw he can't overpower him, Vayiga bekaf yirecha. That's when he decided to go for his thigh and the Gida Nasha, but take a kavyach ve'yavkeima. What does it mean? What is that, a cop out? If he was able to do it, he should have done it from the beginning. So by describing it as a specific type of milchama of sorts, that clarifies this nakuda. Yeah. But still, the story is moiridik, and Rashi brings over here that this battle was an interesting one and a more ruchnistic one. This was the Sar of Esav. And still, when Rashi makes such a statement, I want to point out it's when Rashi brings a pirush, it has to play out throughout the whole story. It means if you say it's the Sar of Esav, so now Rashi wants us to go figure and stim this with everything he explains around the story. So saying it's the Sar of Esav helps us. That's why Rashi brought it. But the things that need to be still understood. So Vayarki lo yachaloi, he couldn't do anything else. And before I continue on with the narrative that it's Sar shel Esav, I do want to point out that the Chizkuni and the Rashbam bring. There's a pirush. The Medrash says it's really a Medrash. The Medrash says brings these two opinions, and he brings that it's Malach Michael. And what's the explanation why Taka with Malach Michael? I mean, so why is he fighting with Yaakov Avinu? So, interestingly enough, the way they learn Pshat is the Yaakov Avinu did not want to fight Esav. He was never commanded to fight Esav. Right? He was commanded. Never commanded to confront him. And B'meila Yaakov Avinu, for him, was good to go back home. And Seir is not around home. Seir is outside of Eretz Yisrael. It's up. And B'meila, all good. Malach Michal wanted that Yaakov should overpower Esav, and Esav should be, according to Rashi, in this understanding, Esav should be masking with the brachas. It shouldn't just stay. And I'm just gonna jump the gun a little bit. He wanted that rightfully so, Yaakov Avinu's name should change to Yisrael. Aliba de Emes, his name was Yaakov, which means it was taka taken, not smooth as we know. We know Al Pi Chassidus that anything that's very high comes through interesting ways, like the neshama of Mashiach, as we know through Yud and Tamar, etc. So Yaakov and his brachas had to come in such a way, but we see, and therefore he wanted that the name should change to Yisrael. And at that point, you rightfully own it, and therefore he forced Yaakov to. Now, according to this, I'm just pointing out. If you continue, if you go with this pshat, then we need to understand why is there iser to eat gidanasha, and why? What's the story there? Like, why did he taka when he saw he can't? Then he took out. He went for the gidanasha. He succeeded. Yaakov continued. It wasn't la yuchaloi. So how will that mahalach in the medrash, and according to the Chizkuni and the Rashbam that learned that way and explain it, how will they be able to explain the continuation? Is a good child, and could be for that reason Take Rashi doesn't go with that mahalach and learns that it's the sar of Esav. So it's the sar of Esav, okay? And I'll show you. There's a place in Rashi which could give away that Rashi hints to the fact that it may. Rashi in Pasuk Lamed onward, Yaakov Avinu asks him for his name.
Right.
You don't know who he is.
No.
But even if he doesn't know his exact name, assuming Rashi says, Lama zet tishal, ein lanu shem kavua, mishtanim shmeise. He answered, with his question, he asked, why are you asking for the name? Ein lanu shem kavua. We don't have a like the Malach told Manoach and his wife, that we don't have a name. From this Rashi, it sounds like they were like the malachim that came before Avram Avinu, and they're there for various shlichus, and they're not a specific malach. And this doesn't seem, again, I'm not saying this for sure, but this doesn't seem to go in ganz and gruntig with a mahalach that this is Esav's malach, if he has a specific shlichus. And Rashi at the beginning seems to take very strong, this is Esav's malach, and therefore he wanted him to be Moedel Brachas. So B'cholofin, that's the I'm just pointing that out. It's not mukhrach, I'm saying, because even by Avram Avinu, you find that they had a name, and still it says anyways, so he's fighting by Avik Ad Alois HaShachar, and then Pasuk Chavav Vayomer Shalcheni, Mr. Ish, or the way Rashi brings from the Medrash, it's Esav's man, says it's time, it's morning, I have to go. I'm not going to send you unless you bench me. Now, the following I want to tell you is from the most misunderstood discussions, because Rashi has a whole mahalach here. Vayomer of Mashmecha. So the malach, when he said, Yaakov said, I'm not letting you go until you bench me. So he said, Mashmecha, what's your name? Interesting question. Well, you didn't know who you're coming to. No. It's the malach. So he says, Yaakov. Vayomer Yaakov. Vayomer, and he says, and I'm now going to explain the pasuk the way Rashi teaches. Vayomer lo Yaakov ye'omer oid shimcha. You should know that in the future, not now, in the future, your name is not going to be Yaakov anymore, Kim Yisrael. Rather, the Eibishter is going to change your name to Yisrael. And therefore, please, don't force me to bench you now. When the Eibishter is going to change your name to Yisrael, I'll be there and I'll be masking with you. This is a whole reading, Rashi. Let's see it in Rashi. Right? Rashi says, "V'soiv chosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu nigla lecha bebeis kel umachle v'shimcha v'shamu mevarechecha v'ani yeshem v'ayidilcha aleim." And then I'll agree with you. But Yaakov, it wasn't good for him. Rashi. First of all, Rashi, like as a parenthetically brings a pasuk in Hosea that would explain this, that would make this make sense, right? V'yashal malchu yuchal b'chav v'yitzchanalei. What was the mouth crying? The kids basically yimtzeinu v'sham yidabri mono and hamtin ad sheyidabri mono sham. Yaakov didn't agree, and val korchoi haydolei alei. And at that point, he made him bench him. So, what was this bracha that he wanted? So this l'chura, the reason Rashi was forced to bring that at Tzara Shel Esav is because if you look at Rashi, let's first Rashi and Pasuk Chav Zayin. That's where Rashi actually says it. Ki Allah Shachar says Tzarchan Idlei Shira Bayayim, and Berachtani. What's this bracha that he needs? Hoideli ala bracha shebechani avi. Not I need your brachas. Right. Oh, so this explains. This explains what he wanted from him. She'esav maralim. Esav was questioning the fact that I deserve the brachas, and Yaakov said, "I want you berachtani, not your bracha. Rather, I want you to give a stempel, give a geshpanke to the brachas that I have received belong to me." Now. If you look closely at the Lashon Rashi, he wanted the Yaakov should wait till the Eibishter benches, and he didn't agree. That's madna. What kind of bracha is the Malach's bracha? If the Eibishter wait for the Eibishter. If the Eibishter is not in this bracha, what do you need this guy's bracha? This Malach's bracha. So, just to clarify, it's not the pshat is that I think this goes in line. This is a Ulay Shloimer. This explains. Rashi's going to explain it by explaining his next question. Vayishal Yaakov. Yaakov asked him, now Yaakov turns back to him. This is after a whole night. They're fighting. All of a sudden, they want to meet each other. He asks him, what's your name? He says, Yaakov, nice to meet you. Now, what's your name? So he says, why are you asking my name? So and Rashi's understanding is not his question is, why are you asking my name? He says the question is flawed because we don't have our name is ever changing. Right. And after this discussion, he benched him. And the way Rashi learned the bracha earlier was he agreed with the brachas. Okay? So what is this discussion about the names going on over here? He waited till the morning. They didn't know, the Frierdiker Rebbe, when they came to arrest him, are you little bacha? You didn't know why'd you come here? Right? So the pshat is l'chura. He told Yaakov Avinu, you should know your name is Yaakov. You want me to be Moed on the brachas. Your name is Yaakov. And b'meila be'etzem, this is the way you started off taking over from Esav. And meila, you don't need my haskama for it's not going to help also my haskama for the brachas. They're inherently there is shvindlerai. So Yaakov says, but he tells him you should know that there's milamailo, there's a point when they're going to change your name. And then, this is his suggestion for I know that at that point, rightfully so, Elikim v'manashim, and Rashi explains who are the Anashim, Esav v'Lavan. Rightfully so, they'll say that everything you took from Lavan belongs to you, and everything they took from Esav. But right now, that's not the time. It's not the time. When you come to Beiskel, what happened in Beiskel? Just parenthetically, what happened in Beiskel? Beiskel is the place where Yaakov, at the beginning said, that Bishafti B'Shalom al Beis Avi, where Hashem Lila Lakim, in the place where he slept that night by Vayetz Yaakov, V'el Charona, V'yivga B'Makom, by Hamaria. Hamaria came to him, whatever the pshat is over there. At that point, when the Eibishter is Mekayim is Avtocha, at that point you'll be able to say, and we'll see this actually is true, what the Malach is saying. That only at that point you'll be able to say B'Shafti B'Shalom al Beis Avi, and the Eibishter has kept his word, and then you'll be able to say the Yutaka overpowered. So, but what do you want me to say now that it was justly taken? Right now, you didn't finish overpowering. So, Yaakov Avinu, and that's why he asked him for his name and suggested you should know that in the future is going to change your name. Yaakov Avinu's response to that was, "What's your name?" your name is also changing, and it's changing based on the shlichus. You're completing now a shlichus. If you agree with the brachas now, okay, Esav's koyach is going to be shvacher. Esav's koyach is going to be shvacher, and then I'll be able to meet him. And therefore, he said, I want to hear Haidah from you already on the brachas before it comes from the Eibusher, because I'm supposed to be meeting Esav. Now, just let me take a pause. I'm going to jump back to the Isser Achilas Gidanasha. We skipped this pasuk, but Rashi, if the pasuk epis throws in Al Kain, where is it? Sorry, it's in front of us. That's what I said. Let me read the psukim, and then we'll go talk for a few minutes about this Gidanasha. Pasuk Lamed Aleph. Vayikra Yaakov Shem Amakim Pniel, called it Pniel. Ki Reisi Elokim Panim. I saw a malach face to face. Vatinatzel Nashi, and my life was spared. Vayizrach Lo Yashemesh, and the sun came up. The sun rose. The way Rashi learns. Vayizrach Lo Yitu Pshatim. The Pashta Pshat is Vayizrach Lo is they met as the sun came up. Basically, that was the point. Doesn't mean that it was done for him, or according to the Medrash Agada, the Rashi brings that the Eibusher Taka took it out specifically to cure him. Vutzeleya, and he was limping on his thigh when the sun started coming up. Al Kain, pasuk jumps ahead to the future. You should know that for this reason, forever on, Yidden will not be eating Gidanasha, Asher al Kaf Hayarach, which is on the thigh, until this very day. Because then he touched the Kaf Yerach Yaakov B'Gidanasha. So, what's the connection? Why the Torah writes it over here is another shaila. Why Torah has to tell us? But even I'm saying this, the Torah has to stop everything and tell us what's going to be the Einiklach. So there's a very interesting Sforno. And the Sforno learns that this was that Al Kain Lo Yechli Yisrael Gidanasha. This is Musar to Bnei Yisrael, that his sons, he had the 11 sons. They were ready to. They were ganz young, mind you, right? Because it was within the 11 years. It was 20 years, right? Okay. And they let him stay on the other side alone. He carried them over, whatever the reasons I brought from the Zayir, Yom Kippur, but Echshiyah, they let him stay alone. And it's Vasa Yaakov Levade. So as a muster for them, they should never eat Gidanasha. They should never make again such a mistake to leave their father alone. They learned this fun. And the Rashbam and the Das Kenim, which is from the Balei Teisvis, both of them, and Rashbam saying called Rashi, they both learn that it's Aidah, Shevach Vaidah to the Eibusher. We don't eat it as a Shevach Vaidah. It's a little schwer to understand. Saying you don't eat it, forget to eat, whatever. I mean, ain't beginning but nice in time, but it says the Shuman has a psatam. Well, why is that the Aidah? But it's Aidah, thanking the Eibusher. There's one specific one that I want to point out because according to the Arachaim, it'll help us understand how, if you remember earlier, I mentioned that there appears in the Medrash that this was Malach Michal. If this is Malach Michal, so why Al Kain? First of all, it's hard to understand. When he says he can't, then why is he hurting him? And why lo yuchaloi? Itaka was matzliach. If his kavana was
Esau's malach makes sense.
Yeah, but it was why is he hurting him? And secondly, the lo yuchaloi is out of place. Itaka was matzliach. He's going to go meet Esau. So the Chaim HaKadosh doesn't come to answer that, but he says you should know that the malach took off the Gidanasha. It's a tumah. It doesn't belong by Bnei Yisrael. And at that point, the Malach took it away from Yaakov. And Al Kain Lo Yechli Yisrael Gidanasha, because Ba'atzim it was meant to be by Bnei Yisrael. Now, what this helps us understand is that when either the pshat is v'yarki lo yochaloi, that he won't be able to overpower Esav this way if he has episashachas the klipa, that's pshat ki lo yochaloi. But echshiyah, even though lo yochaloi can't be that he's not being successful, so he took away this klippa from Yaakov Avinu, and this will also explain why Al Kain Lo Yochel Yisrael Gidanasha, according to this opinion that it's that he wasn't a foe, he was a friend. But he took away this klippa, and now that we see that was his goal,
Makes sense.
yeah. Still have to you have to put in the time to think according to the pshat that it was Malach Michal, how you explain the mashmecha, the back and forth. Okay. Now the short few in Yanim. There's the discussion when they actually meet. Okay. I'm not going. So Parak Lamed Gimel. We're gonna go till Shishi. Yeah. Okay. Parak Lamed Gimel. So he says, "Vayisa Yaakov is Einav." He raised his eyes. Vayarvin Esav ba. He sees Esav coming. Ve'imar abame is ish. He's together with him 400 men. Vayachatz hayeladim aleya v'al Rachel. He split the children v'al shtei hashvachos. Okay. Now, Vayasim hashvachos. He lined them up. He put the shvachos before. That's Yaldein Rishayna. The shvachos is Yaldein. Sorry, Rishayna. That's Leah v'Yolada achronim. And Rachel and Yosef achronim. So Rashi says achron chaviv. He put the most precious ones. He put back. So the shaila that it's so interesting that's brought is the halacha is that if someone says you're not allowed to prefer one life over another. That means if someone says give us one nefesh, if you give us one yid, then we won't kill everybody else. But if you don't give us one yid, then we're going to kill everybody. You're not allowed to give over. You're not allowed to give over a yid. That's a shaila. I don't want to talk about it now, but this from the chuvas in the time of the Holocaust lie there that they want lists of children and they had to give a certain quota. So were they allowed to? Were the Yidden allowed to give over the Yidden, not whoever they were, allowed to give over certain children for Narigas Kulcham, so you let them Narigas Kulcham. So we say it's a little different because they had specific names. Actually, yeah. How was Yaakov Avinu allowed to put Achron Chaviv, put Rachel and Yosef at the back? So I saw Parsha very interesting that being that they were downtrodden, the Bnei Hashvachos, it's brought in a few places that they were not only Kisnu Aleya, but I'm saying that they were looked down upon by the rest of the Shvat, and that's what's brought by Yosef, that Yosef was Mekar of them. So it says Elakim Yavakish Nirdaf, and therefore Yaakov put them first because Fakert in the schus that they were downtrodden, in their schus everyone's going to be saved, and therefore Rashi says Achron Chaviv, who is precious to him. He said they don't have that schus, and therefore he put them in the back. It's interesting. Anyways, and v'hu avar lefneim, he went before them. Okay, vayishtachu arza, he bowed down Sheva Pam 7 times. Ad yishta ad achiv. Vayaretz Esav till he got close, and Esav ran towards him by Chabkeu. He hugged him. Vayipol al tzavar, he fell over his shoulders. Vayishakeu, and he kissed him. Vayifku, and they both cried. So Rashi, it's interesting. I didn't put enough time to think this through, but Rashi on Vayichabkeu says that this galgul rachmov, dafket him hugging him. I mean, on the word Vayichabkeu, Rashi says because of the shlachavoyos, he is galgul rachmov. He learns it specifically from Vayichabkeu that he had extra rachmanas. Why? Because from Vayishakeu, from the fact that he kissed him, there's a machlokes. But on the Vayichabkeu, there's no machlokes. Vayishakeu, it's nakud olav. If you look at the word, it has dots on top of each letter, and whenever there's a nikud, it's a miut. So it's machlokes in the Bryce and Sifri. What is it negating? Is the pashta zach that he kissed him, and therefore the nekudas are telling us that even though he kissed him, it was not b'chol l'bavai. That's the first day in the Medrash. Or no, the miut is different. The miut is that biyudua halacha. Rashbi says, Rashi Bechai says, biyudua that Esav halacha biyudua she Esav sainol Yaakov. No, that Esav for sure hates Yaakov, and Memela that's the going great. That's pasuk. And the Bishakei was coming to tell you over here he was menashik b'chol l'bavai. It was metanemas, unlike all the other times. Good. So these are 2 days, but Lagabi the Vechabkeu, there's no, hasn't brought any opinions that there's no miut. The Pashta Pshat. So Rashi says how Taken is Galgal Rachmot. He saw him making all this in the Shtachavoyes. And he asked him, Mi Eila. So let's see, Pasuk. Hey, he says, "Ein of he raised his eyes, Vayaras Hanashim say Ladim." And well, so Rabbi Shakeu, Pasuk Dal, Vayaras Esav across the Esav at that point ran towards him. Mechageu, he hugged him. Vayipol al Tzabarav, fell over his shoulders. Vayshakeu, he kissed him. Vayivku, and they both cried. Pasuk Hey, by Yisas Ein of he raised his eyes, Vayaras Hanashim say Ladim. He saw the women and the children. Va'amar Mi Elalach. First question: what's their connection to you? Okay. So Yaakov responded, these are the children the Eibishter granted your servant, referring to himself. Then Vatigashna Shvachos Henav Yaldein, the Shvachos were first, so they came over, and they bowed, Vatigash Gam Leah, Beilodeh Vishtachavu, they bowed down. Yosef V'Rachel Vishtachavu. Rashi points out that Yosef was walking before Rachel, unlike all the ones before, because by Leah it says Leah v'Yiladeh. The Shvacha is Hena v'Yaldeh. Where Yosef stood before to make sure that she doesn't. Even if maybe he's going to look at her and want to be married to her, and therefore he stood before her. Therefore he had this bracha of Ayin Hara is not shared by. And now he's asking. Now he's asking the second question. Okay. Now, who was this whole machana, the whole encampment that I met earlier? And Rashi brings two pshatim. One is this is referring to all the gifts. And then what's his question? They answer the question already when he met them, right? So Rashi's bothered. L'chura, this is what bothers Rashi. Why is Esav asking that whole group? Who was there? Who were they, or what was it about? Okay, so Rashi says there's another pirush that there was a whole group of malachim coming and zetzing them, machana like hitting Esav the whole time, and you see it inside. Let's lean in Rashi. Midrasha. See, Milacha. Look at Rashi Ches. Milacha kol machana. Who was the entire machana? Asher pagashti. Who shu shalcha? Kloimer lamo lecha. Okay. What's their intention? So Pshuta shall make it's referring to Mordechai and Mincha, those that were bringing the gifts. So Midrash, the Medrash says, Kita shal malachim paga. There are groups of malachim that he bumped into. Doichim oizav as anazav. They would push around, knock around, bounce around Esav and his men and ask them, who are you? Who are you men? Who do you belong to? We're the 400 men of Esav. Haku, clap, zets. The other group of malachim would say, no, let's let him. He's the son of Yitzchak. And they would still hit. So then the second group would say, 1 second, Ben B'nai Avram, these people, they're Einiklach of Avram Avinu. These people are men that are shaykh to the Einikel of Avram. They still didn't care. They were still hitting. Oh, if you're from Yaakov's men, let you go. You're good. Okay? So as Rashi learns, this is Pshat Limtzechein. This is all the Eibishter did. I should be Moitzechein Beinei Adoni. Now, according to this, just to point out, according to the second pirush, that Milachok al Machna Zeh is referring to the Malachi Chabola, let's call them, all these Malachim that are zetzing up the Malachi Esav. So what's Yaakov in his answer? We have to verstehen, wie said gehen weiter. Rashi brings it as a pshat. So how's he going to explain? The Yerma limtzechein beinei adayni. This whole Machna is all limtzechein beinei adayni. Yaakov, that they should find favor. They gave the klep. How could it be that Yaakov is saying that I sent them to find favor in your eyes? So, Ula Yesh Loimar, that this goes back to what we were discussing at the beginning of the Parsha. At the beginning of the Parsha, we kept on pointing out, Rashi says that Yaakov kept on saying, he's loy ochihu, he's not my brother, he's not my brother. Because, and the way I understood it is that way, the Eitiv won't apply to him. The schus others won't apply to him because he's not acting like my brother. The only way it will apply to him, the schus others, is if he acts to me like Achi. And if he acts to me like Achi, I'm ready to be his brother. And therefore, the whole Yaakov is saying, you should know that everyone I sent was with the same intention of this group of malachim. The group of malachim, what do they want? They wanted to say, if you're you couldn't care less. You're the son of Yitzchak, Klep. You're the son of Avram, Klep. There's no eitiv for you. So what you're an Einikol? The fact is you hate Yaakov, and that's not from Bnei Einikol of Avram Avinu. Their simon is Vaishan Rachmana. You're a friend of Yaakov, then Achinata. You're like our brother. If so, you're acting like a brother, then we could let you be. Because then, forget, all of a sudden, Avram and Yitzchak, that applies. So, he says, this whole set of malachim came, was limtzechein beinei adayni, that I should find favor in your eyes, and you should act to me like a brother. Okay, weiter. So, Esav responded, now, the pasuk test tells us, now, Esav is responding to let's go with the Pashta Pshat, that Yaakov said, I sent all the whole machna to find favor in your eyes to send you gifts. So Yaakov responds, and so Esav says, Esav yeshli Rav. I have a lot. Rav harbe. I have more than I need. We're all good. I don't need your gifts. You should have whatever you have. Now this was a slip of the tongue that Yaakov was waiting for. This is where Yaakov Avinu, where Esav was mighty to Yaakov in all brachas. This is what he wanted. Just like what he wanted from the Malach, this is what he wanted from the Esav himself. So machnas kind of the lights. Good. Vayomer Yaakov. Okay. And Yaakov has to convince him yet to take the matanas, right? He said, I don't want to take the matanas. I have more than I need, therefore share favors. Vayomer Yaakov, Pasuk Yud, Yaakov, I'll know. Please not. If I find favor in your eyes, you'll take my gift from my hands. Just, I'm reading it the way Rashi learns Pshat. Just for the fact that I saw your face and Kirois Pnei Elikim, which is valuable for me, like when I saw the Malach, but they're saying you accepted me, just for that you deserve the gift. Okay? Now, the first one is he's hinting what's Kiriyas Pnei. Okay. Al Kain Reisi Panecha. He says you to be mekabel because it's I just for the fact that I saw your face that brought me simcha. I want to give you. But what is he mentioning this malach? So first of all, he says Rashi says it's chashuv to me to see the malach that the outcome of the malach that I met already, which means Esav. This is the va'oid for the fact that you're batir. Two reasons why you should accept it, because you accepted me even though I stole the brachas. So, yeah. Just to point out that Rashi brings one pshat that he mentioned. Why did he mention? Is to give him to hint him. My friends are. You know who I met yesterday? Just I'm close friends with this person. Just out of the context, but you should just remember being them handles of that. So okay. Birchasi, pasuk Yud Aleph, Kachnas Birchasi, please bring my brachas. Rashi learns the pshat is my gift. Not you shouldn't understand that this is pshat the bracha. Asher Huva, Kachnas Birchasi, Asher Huva Slach, which I'm giving to you as a gift. Ki Chanani Elikim, the Eibishter has granted me with so much. Ki Yeshli Kol, I have everything I need. Vayivtzer boy vayikach, he pressed him, and Esav took. So Rashi first of all points out the different wording, the difference between Yaakov and Esav. Esav said, Yeshli Rov, I have a lot, I have much more than I need. I'm rolling in dough. Okay? Yaakov says, I have exactly what I need. So that sounds good. One thing over here is Zeir Shretz the first time. He says, take this birchasi, which is this a gift that I'm giving you. Asher hu vaslach. Note, you're not doing anything to get it. I worked very hard to get it, but I'm giving it to you, and you are just getting it for free. Now, who's going to take a gift when someone tells that to them? Is that meant to convince him? What is that supposed to mean? Right? Look at Rashi. Asher hu vaslach, Rashi lo tarachta, but you didn't work hard. V'ani yogaiti lagio. I worked hard to bring it till it gets to your hand. What is he telling you? Okay, so I think the pshat is, according, if you can understand, we appreciate that you should know. I don't have anything that belongs to me because of the brachas of Yitzchak Avinu. This is all in line with Rashi's Mahalach that Yaakov is downplaying the brachas. They didn't work, like he said at the beginning. It wasn't Mital Shemayim, and therefore Yaakov is telling him, you should know, I worked very hard for this, and therefore, be'etzem, there's nothing. I don't see the brachas working as a bracha. Fakert, if anything, if there's someone getting brachas, it's you. You have more than you need. Right? What do you say? Yeshli Rav. You're getting more than you need. And not only that, I'm giving this to you. And therefore, Esav took it. We'll see afterwards. Esav tries to give Yaakov in the shtel tzachai, I'm not taking any help. Because Yaakov is saying, the brachas are not working. I worked very hard for Lavan. That's what I'm getting. So, and therefore, he says to Esav, that's also l'chura. That's how Rashi can also explain why the pasuk uses kachnas birchasi. Take my brachas. Why is he saying brachas? It's a weird word to use in the context of this is a very ungevetic the issue, right? Yaakov took the brachas from Esav. So why is he? So you say kachas minchasi. Why does he use the lashon brachas? Because over here, that's what he's telling him. You're just getting it. It's the brachas are by you. I see. Look at the brachas being by you. And okay, I'm gonna jump ahead. We're just gonna point one more nakuda, and we'll wrap up. This is the whole discussion. That's the main thing. And now Esav wants to be nice, or maybe he is nice, according to the opinion of Shaka B'chol Avavai, and he says, "Let's go together now. I'll take you where you need to go." And Yaakov Avinu, no, thank you. Why he said that is a good shayla. Yaakov Avinu, he said, "I'm going to go slow." He said, "No, it's going to be nish good for the shaf." Because of the tzayin, if we go too quickly, all the sheep are going to die, and I have a whole malacha to do with them, right? He says, I have the whole, and so afterwards he tells Esav, you go ahead, and I'll meet you by Seir. Rashi says, Yaakov wasn't planning to go to Seir. Yaakov said, Here, go far away. So he won't bump into him. We're not planning to cross paths, right? Meet me down by the line, and he never came there. But Rashi said, he was planning to go to Sukkot from Pasuk to Yudalek. And he says, there he should wait and he won't do anything bad to me. But when is he going to go as well? He's going to, Yaakov is going to go. Afterwards, it describes that Yaakov went to Sukkot and he built a bayis, ol mikneos Sukkot. And Rashi brings a very interesting in the Gemara that he was there for 18 months. Kites, chayriv kites, for a month, a winter, summer, winter, summer. And he's medayik. It says Sukkot, which is summer, bayis is winter, and Sukkot is summer. Even though sishtipnish in the pshutai. Now the Ramban says that this Sukkot is close to Seir. Yaakov was still under the influence. He was close enough to Esav, and therefore the Ramban says this goes according to the Mahalach of the Medrash that brings the Yaakov continued sending gifts as long as he was in Sukkot. Continued sending gifts to Esav because he was still afraid until he reached Shechem, till Pasuk Yud Ches, where it says, "V'yava Yaakov Shalom Ir Shechem." He came complete to the city of Shechem, Asher Beretz Canaan, which is already in Canaan where he came from. V'voyim Padan Aram, when he finally survived the whole journey, which started off from his trip to Padan Aram, going to the Lavan, running away. So, why does Rashi have to learn Pshat that it was 18 months? This whole, and according to the Ramban, that he was sending gifts. That's why he was staying there. Because as long as he didn't reach Shechem, he still didn't come shalom. He was still afraid, and that's why the reason why Rashi brings this is because the Torah describes Yaakov Shalom Ir Shechem. When did Yaakov come? When he came to Shechem. Why? And Sukkot is he built a house and he had children. So he, according to this pshat of the Ramban, you can understand that it was close to Seir, and therefore it wasn't yet considered Vayav Shalom. And Void Ikar Rashi brings 3 pshatim. If you look at Rashi brings Shalom begufay, that he was Nisrape in Gansen, Shalom b'mamoinoi, that he wasn't missing any money from all the gifts that he gave, and Shalom b'terasa, that he didn't forget what he was learning. These 3 details of Shalom. Now, why does Rashi have to bring this? This can explain why Yaakov waited. Why did he have to wait for so long? Just I'll conclude with this nekuda as a thought. Rashi schreibt nicht stam midrashim. Why does Rashi have to bring 3 details in Shalom? It says, Shafti b'shalom al beisavi. Shalom maybe doesn't even mean complete. Maybe it means peaceful. He's good with Esav. Eibusha saved him. He escaped from Esav, and now he's shalom. He's complete. He's b'achlos with Esav. Rashi goes through with being shalom gufa and from the money of the Dairon and the Teirasai. So Ula Yesh Leimar, this is the reason why Rashi brought before that he stayed a certain amount of months in Sukkos. By Sukkos, because he didn't feel it's right for him to come back to Beiskel. Eibusha said, he told Eibusha, V'shafti b'shalom al Beisavi. If I'll come back complete, Shalom, the way he learns over here. And if he wasn't Nisrape yet, he didn't want to come back. Eibusha's brachas b'mikoyim. He saw that Eibusha was with him, but he saw it's not the time yet. And therefore, he stayed in Sukkot till he was Nisrapa. And in addition, like the Ramban brings from the Medrash, he was continued sending gifts because Vayishlach, he's not yet Shalom with Esav. And then, after that was complete, when he became Gesund, and then he felt that he's Nisra, and that the relationship with Esav is strong, sent all the gifts, then he came back to Beiskel because the bracha was Mekuyim. We're going to stop by Chamishi. Oh, okay.